Hello and welcome back to another episode of my walkthrough series of Cicada Detroit. In this video we are covering puzzle 37. It is a long one, so buckle up. We're going to be here for a while. Let's dive in. Alright, 37. Starting with part 1, we have some text here that seems to glitch and change. It says, I told you in the rules that you'd have to show your math, so it shouldn't be surprising to tread a familiar path. And then the other text is, you'll soon see clarity in parts that once left you perplexed. So go back to the first challenge and determine what comes next. And if you have trouble reading those, you can right-click, inspect, and you can see in the source code here that we have both text, and you can read it easily there without dealing with the glitches. So it says to go back to the first challenge, so that would be puzzle 1. Alright, so here I have the first puzzle pulled up, and as you'll recall, the URL for that is /duck. Now, for what comes next, everyone knows the children's game, Duck, Duck, Goose. So if we go to /goose, it takes us to puzzle 37 part 2. Now for part 2, it says, after that came hexadecimal, and if you left a dash, you might find these two animals that made your decode trash. And this one is a bit tricky. Now you'll remember puzzle 2 looked like this, where we had hexadecimal that you had to translate into ASCII. Originally I told you that you had to pull the hexadecimal values from the URL, like this, which has all these dashes in between each of the numbers. The current version of the puzzle doesn't show that, but that's what it used to look like. It didn't give you the numbers here, it's all in the URL. So if you took that with the dashes inside of it, you used a tool like Crypty and you didn't take them out and just pasted that in, it doesn't decode your text and instead leaves a default text up here of the quick brown fox. Jumps over the lazy dog. And this is actually referenced on Reddit at one point, where a player got stuck on puzzle 2 because they didn't take the dashes out of the URL. And they got stuck seeing the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And there were a few people that ran into this issue, which is partially what prompted the puzzle to change and just list out the values here instead of forcing you to grab it from the URL. So the two animals are the fox and the dog. So if we go to /fox_dog, takes us to puzzle 3, or rather part 3. And here it says, I said it doesn't look like anything is here at all. Search deeper. So now we'll pull up puzzle 3 side by side. And as you'll recall, puzzle 3 had the text that was black on a black background, but you can see it by highlighting it with your cursor. Now if we inspect the page here, then we go to sources. Search in all files of Cicada Detroit, and we will search for the word deeper. And we will find that in one of the CSS files, at the very bottom, there is /deeper still. And if we take that, that is actually our URL. Not sure why that happened. Alright, and that takes us to part 4. So now we'll pull up puzzle 4 side by side. Alright, so here we have a sign that swings back and forth, and it says, you can hang out here to decipher this one. Interesting, that has changed. When I solved it, it said you could hang out here to decipher what came next. At any rate, it's the same puzzle. So back in puzzle 4, we had these runes that we had to decipher. And on the subject of runes, in Norse mythology, the runes were discovered by Odin when he hung himself from the world tree, Yggdrasil. He hung there for 9 days, and after doing that he was able to read the runes, or in other words, decode the runes. So by hanging out here, or rather there on that tree, he was able to decipher the runes, which makes Yggdrasil the answer. That takes us to part 5. Alright, so it says, you found the ID3 tag, but does anyone know where Mom and Dad went? And then that just loops. Now, as you will recall, the URL for puzzle 5 was /mom and dad, and we have a song here. I'll play it again. Now, the song that plays here is actually a Nirvana song, and the only reason I knew that is because XIX said that on Discord back in April. So when I did this puzzle, my method was searching for Nirvana songs and Mom and Dad. But as my friend Jack pointed out, if you just search for Mom and Dad Went and song, The very first result you'll get is a Nirvana song, which is called Sliver. And the very first line is Mom and Dad went to a show. So that's where Mom and Dad went. And this is in fact the song from Puzzle 5. The piano notes you hear are the vocal melody of the song, and the notes align with the words Mom and Dad went to a show. I won't play the song because I don't want to get copyright striked. But if we go back here, we know that Mom and Dad went to a show. So if we type /to a show, that takes us to part 6. Now for 37, part 6, we have what is Mr. Wilson's true Eastside location? As you recall, puzzle 6 had the cow puzzle that we solved. Now this cow head actually exists in Detroit on top of a former Ira Wilson and Sons Dairy Co. location. Here we can see it. This is what it looks like in Detroit. And the address of it is 13041 Mack Avenue. Now if we go back to the puzzle, in puzzle 5, the MP3 file we had was called 13041-2.mp3. 13041 being the address of the cow head. So if we go to 13041 Mac, that'll take us to the next puzzle. And there we have it. One thing to watch out for with that puzzle though is that if you search for like the giant cow head on Google Maps, it'll actually give you the wrong address of 13099. If you type in 13041, you'll see it's in the exact same spot. It's both the same location, and 13041 is the actual address. If you look at it, you'll see that we are again at the giant cow head. So not sure what's up with that, but something to watch out for. And now for part 7, you'll recall that in the original puzzle 7, we had an exit sign which contained exit data. And here it says, you found the first exit. Another is hidden through a different entrance. And we have this little image here showing an exit sign. Now, this one is pretty tricky. There's one thing different on this page. If we inspect it, look at the sources, we can notice that the hint GIF is actually more recent than it is on any of the other pages. For example, on this one, if we inspect, go to the sources, we can see that the original hint GIF was uploaded in January of 2025, whereas this one was uploaded in May of 2025, which you didn't know is when this puzzle released Puzzle 37. So this image is actually different. And if we download this image, right click, save image as, get the hint.gif, we'll save that. And now we'll look at the EXIF info for that. And we'll see a /Sartre. And now we'll take that URL and we will go there. And that takes us to part 8. But before we do part 8, I would like to mention that that URL is a reference to a play called No Exit, written by Jean-Paul Sartre, which ties it in with our original puzzle where we had no exit. Alright, so here we have some basic code that prints out on the screen. It says rem cicada flashback, print tsnt fett, decoding pattern plus 3 repeating, no hints found in current puzzle, parsing page data, searching truthfulness, lie found, decoding fib, author not honest when said nothing here. Now, as we'll recall, in puzzle 8 we had an example URL ending with /nymph. And that page said, nice try but nope, nothing here. Let's save this image and look at it closer. So here I've opened it in an image editor. We see we have a few frames of this animation. If we go to the last frame, and zoom in real close here, you can kind of make out some words. Alright, so here I've looked at the luminance gradient of that frame. We can see a little bit clearer now that it says /real monsters right there on the wing of the cicada. So if we go to /real monsters, it takes us to part 9. And real monsters being a reference to this animated television series called Real Monsters, where ties it in with the nymph. Alright, so here it says, from where this ciphered text originated, the correct key shares a name with another nutrient. Now, remember when I told you to Google the phrase, be sure to drink your Ovaltine if you didn't know what it was already from? Well, it's from the movie A Christmas Story. And in that movie, Ralphie has to decode a secret message using a decoder ring. And in the audio, it says this.
On you. Set your pins to B2. Here,
set your pins to B2. B2 also being a vitamin. Now, later in the clip, you'll see the code written out, but it doesn't actually get solved using B2. It gets solved using B12, which someone pointed out in this Forbes article, where it's not B2, it's actually 12. B12 is also a vitamin, which makes our answer B12. Alright, so for part 10, it says, what preceded this key helped take us to the moon? And looking back at puzzle 10, we had the Playfair cipher, where the key was BASIC. Now, BASIC is a programming language. An older programming language, called Fortran, was used to do some of the calculations in the days of the Apollo missions, which makes our next answer Fortran. Alright, so for part 11, it says, where would Alice raise sheep, cattle, and chickens? And then as you recall, puzzle 11 was a list of coordinates, each coordinate lined up with a location in Australia where there was a landform or a building shaped like a letter or a number. Now, for this one, you need to go back and look at these again. Doing so, you'll find that on this location, I'll show you what happens. We Google that, and we'll see that in the vicinity, there's a place called the Wonderland Hobby Farm, as in Alice in Wonderland. So, where would Alice raise sheep, cattle, and chickens? At Wonderland Hobby Farm. So, we will go to Wonderland Hobby Farm. And that takes us to part 12. And for part 12, it says something to chase your Valium with. And as you will recall, Valium was one of the cocktails served at Lily's 21. Another one of their cocktails was called
Jeżynówka.
And you can find this mentioned several times in the Facebook group of Friends of Lily's 21, where people reminisce about Lily's 21 before it became the Painted Lady. So you'll take that. We'll go back. And that is our URL, which takes us to part 13. And here we have this effect where the letters come in and out of view. Just like the original puzzle 13, this is another rebus. Here we have the whole alphabet spread out, except for the letters L and S are above it, or rather they are higher than the rest of the alphabet. So you could say we have a high L and S, high L and S, Highlands, which makes our answer Highlands. We'll go there. And that takes us to part 14. Now for part 14, it says, that is a lot of cicadas. And in the original puzzle 14, we had a ROT 13 cipher that decoded to a YouTube video, and that YouTube video contained a lot of cicadas. And now if we look at the transcript, you will see that at 6 seconds in, there is the text, fun fact, there are /over 17,543 cicadas in this video. So we'll take that as our URL. We'll go there. And that takes us to part 15. And here we have a very obnoxious flashing image where we have calcium on the periodic table. We have an image in the background. And just like the original puzzle 15, this is going to be a charades type thing where we have something that sounds like something else. If we inspect the page, we can find that the image is called one word describing what calcium sounds like. We can save that image. We'll check out the exit data of that. And we see we have a clue here, W. Walker Smith. So we'll take that name, place that, and then we'll do calcium sounds like. See what we get. We get an article called What Do the Elements Sound Like? And this article talks about data sonification, which is converting the visible light given off by elements into audio, creating unique, complex sounds for each. And if we search for calcium, we'll find that calcium sounds like bells chiming together. So we will go to /bells. And that takes us to part 16. Alright, so for part 16, we have this zoom effect on the page. And it says, follow the hidden message to decode the below XIXEXXXAIXX. And if you recall, in the original puzzle 16, we had a file called coagulation.wave. And the spectrogram of that file looked like this, where it said Raygun 43. And if we search for Raygun 43 on the internet, one of the first results we'll find is Raygun Magazine issue 43. On the cover we have 9-inch nails. Make this image bigger. There we go. 9-inch nails. And that lines up perfectly with the message we had, where it was XIX with the I being there. Then we had E, XXX, AI, and then 2 more X's. So the X's are like blanks that have to be filled in, and the other letters match up with 9-inch nails here. So we'll take that, and we'll go to that URL. And that takes us to part 17. And now for part 17, it says keep following the pattern. And if you recall, puzzle 17 used the QWERTY keyboard layout, where we had QAZ, WSX, EDC, RFV, and then our answer was TGB, YHN. So now we need the next 2 rows, which are UJM, IK, and then the comma. So we'll type that in. UJM, IK, comma. Hit enter. And that takes us to part 18. Now for part 18, we have more Cistercian numerals, just like in the original 18. We have an X, which is not one of the numerals, and then we have this thing that looks like a C. But once again, it is a Cistercian numeral. We have the vertical line. Then we have on the right side, there is this upper hook, and then on the lower left, or sorry, lower right, we have this other hook. We can convert that. We see that gives us 707. Now, you'll recall that this was a phone number. So we have a phone number, and then we have X707. So that will be extension 707. So we will call that number, use extension 707.
UKWB. For the next puzzle, you must continue to /Peggy.
Alright, so we will go to /Peggy. Okay, for the 3rd time I am filming puzzle 19, because the first time I recorded with my mic on mute, and the second time I was working on this, my computer blue screened and reset all of my progress for the day. So, 3rd time, puzzle 19, or part 19. What is another version of the magic word? As you recall, in the original puzzle 19, the magic word was Nedry's password from the book Jurassic Park. So we are looking for another version of Nedry's password. And a quick Google search will show you that there is a Jurassic Park video game where Nedry had a different password. I'll show you that now. You just search for Nedry and password, go to images. The very second image shows you Nedry's password from the Jurassic Park video game, which makes our answer Studry. So we will enter Studry. And just like in puzzle 19, our password prompt has been replaced with an image of Peggy. And here we can see that in the plates on her back there is /Clever Girl, another Jurassic Park reference. We'll take that and go to that as our answer. And now we have a book, and on the book it says, "You heard the buzz of the cicadas, but what else did they hear?" So we'll be returning to the Jurassic Park book again for this part. For this, I'm using a different PDF of Jurassic Park, also on the Internet Archive. This one, however, has a better search functionality. So if we look for the word cicada, because we know they heard the cicadas, what else did they hear? We'll find that there are 5 instances of it in the book. This first one, it says, "It was quiet except for the soft drone of cicadas." So nothing else here. Moving on. The steady background drone of cicadas and frogs had ceased abruptly. Okay, cicadas and frogs. Moving on. The first tentative croak of a tree frog. The buzz of one cicada. Okay, frog again. There was very little sound in the forest except for the drone of cicadas and the soft croaking of tree frogs. Again, cicadas and frogs. And then the last occurrence of the word just talks about the buzz of jungle cicadas. So, every time people hear cicadas in this book, they either hear just cicadas or they hear cicadas and frogs, which makes our answer /frogs. That takes us to part 21. Alright, now for part 21, we have this lovely frog. If you mouse over it, its tongue comes out. And it says, 3 appeared, find the correct 4th. Back in puzzle 21, we needed Patrick's license number from in the video. The URL also contained Mrs. Puff's driver's license number. And in the previous puzzle, puzzle 20, we had SpongeBob's driver's license number appear as the name of the text file that we extracted. And that was a 1356021.txt. So those are 3 license numbers from the SpongeBob universe. Now we need to find a 4th one. We can do that by searching for SpongeBob driver's license numbers. And we'll see that we get a list of license numbers from the SpongeBob encyclopedia. Scrolling down, we'll see that we have a whole list here. You can go through and try each one. The one you need is for Mr. Krabs, which we can see is A5265661. We'll copy that. We'll go to that URL. Now for part 22, it says, what does this poem represent? Looking back at puzzle 22, you'll recall that the first letter of every line in this poem spells out red herring, which means the poem represents red herring. So we will go to /red herring, and that takes us to part 23. Alright, so part 23, we have this little trippy rollover effect where it says action, failure, and then we have 12 underscores. So these are both listed as keys to success. Action from the quote from Picasso, and failure being the failure.txt file we saw earlier, also in puzzle 23. So we're looking for another key to success, which happens to be 12 letters long. So this will just take some trial and error. We're looking for another word that is a key to success that happens to be 12 letters long. And with some trial and error, you will find that the word is perseverance. So we will go to /perseverance. And that takes us to part 24. Alright, now here we have the numbers 1 through 14 falling off the screen. And it says, without the rogue 14, what represents the theme? Well, in original puzzle 24, we were looking at pi. However, 14 digits were wrong, aka the rogue 14. If they weren't wrong, we would just have pi here. So we can say that the theme is pi. So what we're going to do is go to /pi. Now, not spelled out as pi. You need the actual Greek letter, pi. Go to /pi. And that'll take you to puzzle 25. Alright, so for part 25, it just says dash, they are ... dash. There is a rollover effect on these letters. And you'll recall that in the original puzzle 25, we had to go to the Detroit Metro Times and find various codes hidden throughout the book. Throughout the magazine, sorry, not the book. But part 3 had a book cipher that was on page 21 of the May 11th, 2021 edition. If you go back to that edition, and look at the very last line on page 21. We'll see that it says, you cannot stop cicadas from emerging. They are inevitable, which makes /inevitable our answer. So we'll go back here, go to /inevitable, and that takes us to part 26. Alright, now for part 26, it says, a joke emotion, not quite what you sought. This feathered fraud came before the plot, and for whatever reason the word before is currently cut off. It might be because of the zoom level. Okay. Alright, now real quick before we talk about part 26, let's go back to puzzle 26 part 2. In this part I had mentioned that the password for this video file was nowhere to be found in the puzzle. You just had to use the file name as the password. That was actually incorrect, as my friend Omicron pointed out. The password is actually mentioned in the HTML. If you inspect the page, you'll see that it says, make that a little bigger. It says the pass is the file name. So the pass is the file name. So there was a hint there. I missed it. I want to make sure you guys knew about it. Now let's go back to the puzzle. So a joke in motion, not quite what you sought. This feathered fraud came before the plot. And you'll remember that in puzzle 26 we got rickrolled several times. So a joke in motion, like rolling, rickrolled. We're looking for a feathered fraud that came before that. If we look up rickrolling origin, we'll find from dictionary.com we have an article about rickrolling. And we can see that the origin of the word rickrolling comes from 4chan, where in the mid-2000s there was a prank where every time you used the word egg on the website, it would get replaced with duck. So if you wrote the word egg roll, it would get changed to duck roll. Spawned the term duck rolling, which would later get adapted to rickrolling. We take duck roll, we go to / duck roll. All right, now for 37 part 27, we have an onion, a / and a key with a 3 on it. And you'll recall that in the original puzzle 27, we went to an onion URL on the Tor browser. So we will go back to the Tor browser. I'm again doing this in Brave. All right, we'll go back to our URL from before. And we have this. Now that key with a 3 on it is indicating our third key to success, which we just saw earlier was perseverance. And there's a / between the key icon and the onion icon, so we'll go to /perseverance. We're immediately hit with a prompt to download a file called perseverance. It doesn't give us a file extension. I'm just going to go ahead and name that .txt. And now we find that file and open it. We'll see that it says / Carl Sagan. We'll take that, get rid of Tor, return to our website, go to /Carl Sagan, and that takes us to part 28. Alright, now here we have this cool effect of stars with some cloud cover rolling by, and it says, a while ago, a person named Pio planned / this role-playing game with some similar names. And real quick, the / Carl Sagan in our URL is a reference to the quote from original puzzle 28. The cosmos is within us, we are made of star stuff, which is a quote by Carl Sagan. Now for this part, we can find the answer with just a Google search. Looking for Pio, role-playing game, and then for a similar name, this dealt with Trappist-1. We search for that with Trappist-1. You need to put quotes around the person's name, otherwise you might get some other results for a game called Trappist-1. Here we'll see on the Nebulamancers wiki, there is an upcoming game called Solar Emissary by Pio Hato, which deals with the Trappist-1 solar system, which makes Solar Emissary our answer. We'll take that, go back, we'll remove the space, and that takes us to part 29. Alright, so part 29, it says, the vessel translates to what? Now going back to original puzzle 29, remember we had to find a vessel, which was a little alien SVG that appears right above the text. There it is. And as my friend Sounds pointed out, I forgot to draw attention to the name of this file, hol, HOL.svg. And as another side note, in the poem in puzzle 36, it was misspelled as HUL instead of HOL. However, HOL is the correct spelling. So, the vessel is hol. We need to know what it translates to. As it turns out, hol is a Klingon word from Star Trek. If you Google for a Klingon translator, the very first result is this one. If you type in HOL, you'll see that it translates to language. So that makes language our answer, which is fitting for our puzzle because we had these signs that look kind of like an alien language of some sort that we had to decode. So we'll go to /language. And that takes us to part 30. And for part 30, it says, maybe the mole really did need a hug. We have these little pop-ups here of moles and logs. If you click on a mole, it says he wanted a hug and you whacked him. That's not good. If you click on a log, of course now there's nothing. There. It says that's not a mole. Play again. So we have this little game here, but this is not where we need to be. We need to go back to the game on Cicada.uno, that command line game we were playing, where there was a mole. So we'll go back there. Once again, SSH guest at Cicada.uno. Type in our password again, which was 9973. Now I just need to play through the game until I make it back to the point with the mole. Let's make this text bigger actually so you can see it better. I will skip ahead to the point when the mole shows up. Alright, we are at the room with the mole. Now we will type hug the mole. It says the mole embraces you back and says / thank you. So we will go to / thank you. That takes us to part 31. Before we cover part 31, I would like to call back to the original puzzle 31, where my friend Buckle here has mentioned that I made it more complicated than it needed to be. As he points out, a simpler way to think about it is just the S and H are just 19 because S is the 19th letter going forward and H is the 19th letter if you count backwards in the alphabet, which is another way that they can be unique but the same, and it requires way fewer steps than what I demonstrated in the previous video. Now, back to part 31. Alright, here it says, this artist showed up a few times since the start. You must put this artist's name after the art. The art being the .art URL that we got from puzzle 31. The artist is not Van Gogh, it's actually Pablo Picasso, who appeared twice in that their painting appeared in puzzle 23, Blue Nude, and their quote also appeared in that puzzle as well, with action being the key to success. So if we go to the .art domain, which was 999719191997.art / Pablo Picasso, we will see / Guernica. If you Google that, if you're not already familiar, that is one of Picasso's best known paintings. Looks like that. At any rate, that is our answer. We will go there. And that takes us to part 32. Now here it says yet another name for the cracked goddess. The cracked goddess being, of course, Cybele, the answer that we had in puzzle 32. Another name for Cybele is Magna Mater, which means Great Mother. So we will go to / Magna Mater. We'll take out the space. That takes us to part 33. Alright, now for part 33, it says where X is the X point. Going back to puzzle 33, you'll recall that near the end of the puzzle, we had this image, which was the point of origin of Detroit. We had a bunch of X's in it, so there's your X's, and this is the point of origin. So where is the point of origin? If we search for Detroit point of origin marker, we will find that it is in Campus Martius Park. And if we go to / Campus Martius, take out the space, that takes us to part 34. Alright, now for part 34, it says, what comes after experience? Looking back at the original 34, you'll recall this is the Alice in Wonderland puzzle with the Lewis Carroll ciphers. Now, to find experience, we will need to get past the first part, so we'll enter in the password Vigilance19, and that'll give us this cipher text. Now this one is a little bit tricky. We're looking for experience. Now, if you play a lot of video games, then you'll know that a common way of writing experience is just XP, or as an abbreviation for experience. And that is in fact the key you need to recognize here, is that you're looking for XP, not the word experience or some metaphorical experience. You're looking for the literal expression of XP, which you can find in the ciphertext here. And what comes after it is the letters Z, W, V, A, K, T. We'll take those letters. We'll go to that URL. And that takes us to part 35. Alright, now here it says the other cat's slug once had a different title. Now if you're not familiar, a slug is the last part of a URL, the user-friendly part that identifies what page you're on. So in the case of puzzle 35, the slug is, we're all mad here, XIX. The slugs are just the answers that we've been typing in on all these puzzles. And now the other cat slug once had a different title. So going back to the puzzle 35, the matrix puzzle, the page that had the cat was this one. Now as you'll recall, the cat is now broken, but I did demonstrate what it looked like in my previous video. So now this slug, which is CC883300, once had a different title. If we Google this, you'll immediately find some matrix references from whatisthematrix.com entry on the Matrix Wiki. If we look for CC883300, we'll find that it was a code that you could enter into a as an access code on the website. It's just labeled as test key. And that is the important thing here, test key. We'll go back to Cicada Detroit. We'll type in test key. The key thing here is you don't need the space, but you do need something between these two words. In this case, an underscore. Type that in. Oh, cool, it broke. Oh, it's back, okay. We'll go to, again, test underscore key. There it goes. We're now on part 36. Alright, now we have this little rollover effect on a cicada image here. Okay, the video is stuttering. I don't know what it is about this poem with the scroll effect here, but it takes a lot of processing power for some reason to render it. So I'm just going to get rid of that so that it's not messing up the frame rate. So back to this. We have this cicada with a rollover effect. Lots of text in the background here. That isn't important, it's just an effect. None of that code means anything. Here we have at Pontiac, hope to return soon. You'll recall that in the end of puzzle 36, the last part looked like this, where we had a quote from the superintendent of the Eastern Michigan Asylum for the Insane, also called the Clinton Valley Center and the Pontiac State Hospital. And you're right, it's in Pontiac, so this is our area of focus for this part. Looking for something to do with, looks like a quote here, again, in quotation marks, and then /X for like whoever wrote this quote. So we will take this quote. So here I've searched for Clinton Valley Center at Pontiac, hope to return soon. One of the results we get is from rootsweb.com, a page about the Pontiac State Hospital. On this page we have a list of images, a lot of them are postcards. One of them, historic postcard of main building, hope to retire soon, it says. Now whoever made this webpage can't read the cursive very well because that is definitely return, not retire. At any rate, here we have at Pontiac, hope to return soon. And this quote is from W.H. McAllister. So if we go to /W.H. McAllister, that takes us to puzzle 38. Now, had you gotten here before the contest ended, this page would have looked quite a bit different. I have a screenshot of that I'll pull up one moment. The page would have looked like this, where it said, congratulations. Next, we enter the in-person portion of our game. Please enter your details below and await your mailed instructions. You type in your username, your email, your address, hit submit, and then you'd receive something in the mail for the start of puzzle 38. Alright, and with that, we come to the end of the online-only portion of the game. Next time, we'll pick up with puzzle 38, the very first in-person puzzle. It's a very exciting time. I'm looking forward to walking you guys through all of the in-person puzzles and all of the exciting things that happened there as we ran around the streets of Detroit. See you in the next one.